Hello and welcome to our webinar. I'm Hannes Hecher, CEO of Schiebel in Austria, and we are very much looking forward for our session today. Your guide, Anna, will take you to a tour through our production facility in Wiener Neustadt. She will discuss with several heads of departments our current and future projects we are working on. You will also be able to watch a live demonstration of our CAMCOPTER S-100 in our test facility in Austria. So this will be a very interesting program. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Hannes. My name is Anna Höffler. I am a program and bid manager at Schiebel and your personal guide for today. So today we as a company, and me as your host, would like to give you an exclusive insight into our company by having a walk around, showing you the latest news from our production facility here in Wiener Neustadt, and meeting people from different departments and talking with them about their projects. Also what we've done last year and what's in the works for this year. My colleague Christoph is also here today, and he's located just a few car minutes away at our flight test site in Großmittel. So let's switch over to Christoph.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I heard we have a lot of participants from all over the world. I welcome you here in our test site, Großmittel. My name is Christoph Greuler and I'm the flight manager. As you can see in the background, our crew is preparing the aircraft for the daily test plan. Because this site is also used for equipment testing, new software versions and acceptance flight, as you can hear in the background. On the other side, for example, we have our full motion platform, which simulates the automatic landing capabilities, as well the NATO compliant grid securing system. On the other side, you can see two data link options, which gives you a range for the smaller one of 50 kilometer and for the bigger antenna of 111 kilometer. A third option with 200 kilometer is available as well. Behind me, you see the container, which is mainly used for our operators to perform the flights, as well to host delegations and customers while showing the system. As the preparation time for our system is below 20 minutes from unloading of the truck until takeoff, we will see us in a few minutes. Let's go back to Anna.
We are really looking forward to it, Christoph, and hear you again in a few minutes. So meanwhile, I am inside our production facility to show you a new feature which we've just added recently. As you may know, the S-100 can be operated with two different types of rotary engines that were both developed in-house. Over here you can see the 40 kilowatt avgas engine, the S1 engine, and over here the 44 kilowatt heavy fuel engine, the S2 engine. The owner of the company, Hans-Georg Schiebel, invests significant resources in the continuous development of the S-100 system as a whole, and the engines are one example for that. So we continuously develop them further in terms of increasing maximum power output, increasing the time between overhaul, and reducing weight. And to optimize the testing of new components, we've just added a new feature to our very own engine test booth, our dyno, in the room behind me. But let me introduce you to Philipp Grob. Hi, Philipp. Hi. Who is the team leader of our engine department and can tell us more about that.
Yeah, in the last couple of months, the ambitious Power Plant design team commissioned 2 new units to make engine testing more efficient and to test the engine to its full environmental specs. With the new device, we are able to simulate high altitudes from sea level up to a pressure which equals about 18,000 feet. The new device makes engine testing more efficient.
So what are the benefits then of this new equipment?
Yeah, so with that new equipment, we are able to run the engine on the engine test stand along with the high altitude device.
But you also mentioned a second unit. So can you tell us about that as well?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. So this is the second unit. It's an air chiller unit. With that device, we can reduce the intake air temperature from the engine down to minus 40 degrees. So combining this test stand and the other test stand, we can test the engine to its full environmental specs in the means of high altitude and testing at low temperatures.
Wow.
That makes the engine testing more efficient and less time intensive.
Thanks, Philip, for that interesting chat. So, Christoph, what about the progress in Großmittel?
Thank you, Anna. We are now inside of our container and the CAMCOPTER is currently being checked. In the background, you can see a typical setup of our S-100 control station. On this position, you will see the pilot operator. He is checking the safety area for takeoff and landing, and he can also control manually in case you need this. At this position, we have our pilot in command. He is entering all the parameters for the pre-programmed flight path, and he checks as well all relevant data and communicate with the airport tower nearby. On this position we have the payload operator for the day. As you may know, our aircraft is multi-payload capable. For example, we can combine EO/IR camera with a cargo box or underslung load in combination with a nose payload. But if you have further questions, please use the chat functions or the Q&A sessions. Let's go back to the payload of the day. We have today an MX-10. It's an EO/IR camera with impressive zoom and stability. Albert, when is the planned scheduled takeoff?
Takeoff is in 10 minutes.
Okay, so takeoff is in 10 minutes. For the moment, let's move to Anna.
Welcome back to Wiener Neustadt. I am now in the office area of the facility and on my way to our head of supply chain, Johannes Kisslinger, to ask him how Schiebel dealt with the COVID challenges and also for some departmental news. Hi, Johannes.
Hi. I heard you come along. How can I help?
We are currently live with our webinar audience and they already heard a lot about the S-100 system. We just visited the engines department and Christoph showed us the flight test area in Großmittel. So could you please tell the audience how Schiebel and especially the supply chain is handling COVID challenges?
Sure. As a company, I think we came through the situation quite well. Early, we had excellent access to protective equipment, and we were very fast in establishing a task force that was closely monitoring the situation and making decisions very fast. For example, we were the first company in the region to establish a COVID test center on site to make sure that our staff is safe and our organization is up and running. Also, our staff acted very responsibly. They followed all the rules. We so far didn't have any major clusters. And at the moment, we are looking at a vaccination rate of above 90%, which obviously is necessary for us since we have to travel and this activity has been ongoing again in the last few months. From a supply chain perspective, it was and still is a very challenging time. We can read it in the newspapers every day. Supply chain disruptions and shortages are the new normal. This comes along with material cost increases, logistic cost increases, energy cost increasing at the moment. So far, we as Schiebel have been not hit very strongly by this. We entered this crisis in a very robust setup. We're working very close with our suppliers. They are very regional. This helps in this situation to be closer. But if one thing that we learned last year is that the resilience of the supply chain cannot be valued high enough. That's why we want to this year further focusing it and further improve it and actually also will further invest in it. Yeah.
And since last year, you also have some new developments in your department. Could you tell us more about them as well?
Sure. Since we moved into this building last year, we have now all the supply chain teams in one place. So we were working a lot on organizational efficiency improvements. We were also spending quite some time on digitalization of our workflows. For customers, for sure, relevant is that we have integrated a dedicated components maintenance team within the supply chain. All modules or components, be it mechanical or electrical, will be channeled through this team. We had a very strong increase last year of overhaul items. And the idea of this activity is that we will shorten the response time to our customers this year significantly. That's the plan.
Thanks, Johannes, for these interesting insights. So, Christoph, are we ready for takeoff?
Thanks, Anna. In fact, we are ready and just waiting for you. So let's go live when the EV is doing a full autonomous takeoff. Albert, please proceed.
Okay, Christoph. We're in system speed, waypoint 1 is selected. Wind is 0, you're cleared for auto VTOL takeoff. Takeoff verified.
As you can see now, the aircraft is lifting off automatically and proceeding to waypoint 1. After waypoint 1, the aircraft is heading to waypoint 2.
Waypoint reached, waypoint 2 is selected.
You can see the next active waypoint, which is indicated by a blue circle. And you see as well the different colors of the waypoint, which means different functions. You have the possibility to change all the functions at any time. So, for example, if you open waypoint 3, you can change anytime the action, the altitude, the speed. Okay, and in the meantime, let's move to the live MX10 stream. Okay, so the aircraft flew its pre-programmed flight route and is coming back for a full autonomous landing.
Okay, Christoph. Waypoint 9, land mode. Position over helipad is okay. You're cleared to land. Touchdown, system speed, cleared for idle. Idle mode verified.
Okay, that was our short demonstration for the audience, and I wish you a good day, and let's go back to Anna.
Thank you, Christoph. During our last webinar, we talked a lot about the capabilities of the S-100 and deployments. An important topic we did not talk about is the training of our customers' crews. We have sold more than 400 AVs so far and have customers flying all over the world. And their crews of operators and maintenance technicians often get trained right here in our facility in Wiener Neustadt. So let's take the chance to talk to one of our experienced instructors, Matthias Musel. Hi, everyone. About the training at Schiebel. Could you please tell how a typical training at Schiebel looks like?
So typical training at the Schiebel facility is an 8-week training for operators and maintainers, where at the end, operators and maintainers are fully able to operate the system up to maintenance level 3 for the maintainers. As you know, with the facility expansion, we received 3 additional rooms, because despite the training and the upgrading numbers of students, where we are right now in one inside, where we have now the SimBox installed with a fully simulation running, where the students at the end get the practical training hands before they head out to Großmittel. And as you know, since 2020 with the COVID situation, we were still able to successfully write off around 200 students for operators and maintainers.
That's impressive. Schiebel also has facilities in Abu Dhabi, the United Emirates, Manassas, the United States, and Shoalhaven, Australia. And last year, our team from Schiebel Pacific also expanded their in-country training capabilities. We pre-recorded a quick chat with Andrew Watson, who is the general manager of our team in Down Under. And action.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Watson. I'm the General Manager of Schiebel Pacific. Schiebel Pacific, or SPL as the locals call us, is located on the south coast of New South Wales in Australia. We deliberately chose this location for our facility as it is co-located with our customer, the Royal Australian Navy. Now, I'd like to take the opportunity to give you a quick brief of what we're up to down under. Firstly, the Royal Australian Navy recently extended our contract by a further 3 years in recognition of our successful delivery of the heavy fuel engine S-100, also known as the S-2. The new contract included additional systems, engineering and logistics support. The contract also changed focus, moving away from a testing and learning phase to an interim capability. This change in focus has seen SPL integrating the S-100 into several warships and creating a full dance card for the remainder of 2022. The Royal Australian Navy has also invested heavily in SPL and the S-100 capability, with the funded creation of local training for both Navy maintainers and Navy remote pilot warfare officers. This investment from Navy has enabled SPL to establish a true sovereign capability through a transfer of knowledge, resulting in customised delivery of training to the Royal Australian Navy. This joint investment of training to the Royal Australian Navy has positioned SPL very well for the soon-to-be released restricted RFT for C129 Phase 5. SPL has partnered with Raytheon Australia and many local SMEs to ensure that we can offer the very best solution for the Navy's maritime UAS requirements. SPL is also working with several other civilian partners to develop the commercial capability of the S-100. 2022 will see the S-100 working with a major energy company in Western Australia, providing a range of capabilities through stores delivery, maritime environmental assessments, search and rescue, and maintenance inspections. As Schiebel Pacific spreads its wings here in Australia, the next several years will be very busy, and all of us at SPL are looking forward to the challenges. Thank you for your time, and from all of us here at Schiebel Pacific, we wish you all the best for 2022. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Andrew, for the update from Schiebel Pacific. It's good to follow the growth in Australia. In the background, you can see Stefan Gamse, our project manager for the European Maritime Safety Agency. So let's go over and see if he has time for a quick chat. Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Anna.
Sorry for disturbing. We are quite proud of being the AV of choice for so many EMSA operations across Europe. Could you please tell the webinar audience about the service provision for EMSA and the latest news?
Of course, happy to do that. As I said, we are very proud of being part of this framework contract, helping the member states and different entities to complementary their existing assets by doing Coast Guard functions. We are started back in 2019. We had there just one deployment ongoing, and we were able to double from year to year the numbers of deployments. So in 2020 we had 2 deployments, 2021 already 4 parallel deployments.
Where did these deployments last year take place?
It was in Spain, in Romania, Estonia and Finland. Also we have now roughly 2,500 flight hours obtained during this period, and we were also able to extend our portfolio what we initially offered to EMSA. As an example, we added the S2 engine to the deployment in Spain. We extended the range with the antenna to 200 kilometers, and also we extended the maximum flight time with the external fuel tank. So we are really pushing to the limits and making the customer happy. Normally we are doing search and rescue and maritime surveillance task for the customers. We have a special payload setup there. In the back we have some antennas. A Mode S transponder is equipped, the UAS receiver, so we are receiving the signals from the ship, and also a BD406, which is an emergency beacon detector. So whenever there is a distress signal, we will receive it, and it is indicated as a point of interest on the map, and we can then go there and doing search and rescue. In the nose payload bay, we have installed the PT8. That's a really good asset in combination with the MX-10, because it automatically detects potential point of interest, and that increases the surveillance task by a factor of 10. And with the MX-10, then you can just put with the mouse to that point and verify if it's a vessel and human or whatever.
And that is mounted in the main payload bay?
Correct, that's true, yeah. We're also proud of being a look holder since 2021.
What does look mean, so the audience?
This is to self-authorize your operation. So it's really streamlining the processes all over Europe. So the different civil aviation authorities are getting also used to it. So we are really looking forward of having here an easier access to all the permit to fly, what's necessary to fly there.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Stefan, for that impressive record and also explaining the configuration to us.
You're welcome. Thank you as well.
So, considering the advanced time, I think it is time now to prepare for our Q&A round. And I hope I've been able to give you some interesting insights into our everyday life here at Schiebel, and also to show you some people that are standing behind the product. And one more thing, it seems like there will be exhibitions and trade fairs coming up this year, and thus the possibility to get together in real life, talk to each other and exchange news. So if you've got the taste for it now and would like to meet our experts face to face, there are several opportunities coming up. But Neil Hunter, our Global Head of Business Development, certainly knows more about that. So over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Anna. As has been the case for everyone over the last 2 years, travel, as we know, has proved extremely difficult for everyone. As such, Schiebel has not been able to attend many events. Indeed, many of them have been cancelled, sadly. Slowly but surely, though, the world does seem to be opening up, and 2022 does look to be a much more promising prospect for Schiebel and indeed for everybody. Fingers crossed for us all. However, to emphasize that we're not actually out of the woods yet, our first exhibition here in 2022 in Japan, sadly, we will not be there, even though we plan to be, and that's purely down to COVID restrictions in the country. This means then that our first exhibition this year will be at UMEX in the Middle East. If it is anything like the Dubai Air Show, where we had a large stand last November, it should be a very successful event, and we're very much looking forward to it. After that, it's the Singapore Air Show. We won't have a stand at the air show this year. However, our Asian sales director, David Peel, will be there walking around. So if anybody would like a meeting with him, then please don't hesitate to set one up. Following on from that, we'll then head to India. So there's a large exhibition called Def Expo in March, and we'll be attending that with our partner, VEM Technologies, as we see the Indian market as a real focus for us in the coming years. We'll stay in that part of the world in March for an exhibition called Defence Services Asia in Malaysia, where we will take a booth with our partner 3Ts. And then we'll jump across to the other side of the world and to the United States for a conference called Sea Airspace by Navy Leagues, which happens over there in April. We'll then literally jump to the other side of the world, and in May, we will attend what is called Indo-Pacific International Maritime Exposition. That'll be handled and run by our Schiebel company, Schiebel Pacific, based out of Nowra, just south of Sydney. And they will be running that on the behalf of the Schiebel Group. The next time you'll see Schiebel will be in Indonesia. We'll be there in Tunisia in May, and we'll be attending the International Aerospace and Defence Exhibition. As it stands, it's probably going to be our only attendance in Africa this year. So for all of those who get a chance from that continent, please go and find us if you can. We should have attended SOFIC, which is a very large Special Forces exhibition in Tampa in America in May, but we've actually made the decision to give that a miss this year, primarily because of COVID, price, and the complexities. But for those of you, our friends in America, I can guarantee you that we'll be back there very soon. However, we will be in North America at that time of the year. There's an exhibition called CANSEC in June. We'll be attending that with our Canadian partner, MDA. And there's very much a focus on the Canadian market this year, as the Canadian Armed Forces will deliver their large tender called RCN ISTAR, looking at rotary UAVs for the Navy, which we're very much plan on bidding on. We'll then jump back into Europe, and we'll attend what is one of the largest European air shows. It's Farnborough this year. We haven't been there for 4 years, but we will have a big booth, and we're very much looking forward to being back at that air show. As we head past the summer, our next event will be in Poland I think it's in September, and it's called MSPO. But the importance of Poland for us is that we're part of a tender there for the Polish Navy, and we're looking to meet companies and work out how we enhance our sort of position and presence in the country of Poland. Then back down to Australia, there's a very large exhibition called Land Forces. Again, that'll be run by our Schiebel company, Schiebel Pacific. And then back into Europe for the last couple of events of the year. Euronaval is happening this year in October. We'll have a good presence there as usual. And then finally in November, we're planning to drop down into Greece for an exhibition called Maritime Air Systems called MAST. The Greeks are very much looking at rotary UAVs, and we're putting a lot of attention into that country, as you would expect. So that gives you a summary of what we plan to get up to this year, 2022. I hope that we'll be able to go to all of those exhibitions. Please come and say hello. Please come and find us. Please come and discuss your requirements. Please ask us about our S-100 rotary UAV, and we'll be delighted to answer your questions. So that's it. That's the webinar mostly over, but we're now going to finish with a Q&A session. So we're ready to go on that. Very much looking forward to receiving all your questions. And I can assure you we'll give you very honest answers to every one of your questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Schiller. I'm the head of program management within Schiebel. I have with me today two of my colleagues, Neil Hunter, our global head of business development, as well as David Peel, our Asian sales director. Before we start answering all of your questions that you already put into the Q&A part of this webinar, I would still ask you, if you have additional questions, please put them into the chat. Please put them into the Q&A discussion board. I will monitor the situation, and I will try to, or we will all try to answer as many questions as we can today. If your question cannot be answered live, we will answer them later on. So we will get in contact with you and you will get the answers to your questions, no problem at all. So before we start, any additional words from you guys, or are you open for the first question?
Ready to go.
Ready to go.
Ready to go, yeah.
So then let's start with the first question that I received. It's, hi all, how long does it take to prepare the aircraft for flight?
I think you can do that one,
Michael.
Michael. Answer that if you like.
Yeah, I know. I asked this question to myself, actually. In general, if the aircraft is prepared, if you're ready to go, it takes about 10 minutes for the aircraft to be airborne. If the aircraft is still in boxes, meaning that you just arrived on a scene where you need to put the aircraft into the air, this can happen within an hour, easily by 2 to 3 people. So what about pilot certifications? So I believe this question is about, do we give the people pilot certifications?
I can answer this one, Michael.
Yep, perfect.
So Schiebel has OEM courses where we train pilots, technicians, and operators to operate the unmanned air system. But normally the regulatory authorities in your country will then issue a license on the back of the course you have done at Schiebel. So it's an individual country requirement, whatever their requirements are, but Schiebel will give you a fully aviation-based course, which will allow you then to go back to your own country and have a local license within that country.
And I can probably add to that. I think it's important to recognize that we have customers across the world. We primarily try and teach them in English. We obviously have followed manned aviation standards as best we can when it comes to unmanned training. So we try and copy those. The courses are very detailed, and again, every customer is different. So there are some customers who will need in-depth information about aspects such as aeronautics or the weather, where there are other customers who, maybe because they have a manned background, don't need that background in training. So we offer a very flexible solution that depends on the customer, but at the end, they all get the same training and they all have the same level of training, which allows them to safely operate and use the S-100.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, how many people do you need to operate the system?
Yeah, again, I'm happy to take that.
Yeah.
We're probably all going to fight for the questions today, aren't we? I'll take it. In its simple form, you need two people to operate it. We talk about one being the pilot in command, the operator in command. Again, different countries use different phrases, but you basically have one person who is in charge of the aircraft, and then you have a second person who is the payload operator. So in simple terms, it's just a crew of two. Those two people are interchangeable, so they can swap roles if required. And then obviously that's backed up by a maintenance crew. And again, in its simplest form, it is one maintainer supporting two operators. Again, it depends on the complexity. If we're flying with multiple payloads, as you heard from Stefan earlier, we can fit 3, 4, 5 sensors on board this aircraft. So there are occasions where you may want an additional payload operator who is looking at one specific sensor. Again, it depends on the customer, it depends on his concept of operations.
Okay. The next question would be, for a naval application, how many antennas are necessary for automatic takeoff and landing?
This is one for you, Michael.
Yeah, so in general, we can say that the system for automatic takeoff and landing, we just need the one antenna that we have, plus a secondary link antenna as a backup. But it is mainly depending on the ship that you fly from. Obviously, not all ships are the same and all ships have different shape and sizes. So we have to individually adapt our antenna situation depending on the ship. Sometimes you can, if your operation wants to have the farthest distance available, that would mean that the antenna is more on the top of the ship on the mast if possible, the highest point if possible, which also can mean that this antenna is not able to reach down to where the takeoff area is, which would then need you to have a second antenna. But like I said, it's mainly depending on the ship and not really depending on our capabilities.
Yeah, and let me add to that. As Michael said, in its simplest form, it is one antenna, but we routinely fit two antennas. So if you can't put an antenna on the top of the mast, it will give you 360-degree coverage. Obviously, the other way to do that is either to have two antennas, one forward and one aft, or one port and one starboard. And we're quite used to setting that up, even on ships as large as frigates or helicopter carriers, as we've done for a couple of our customers. So it's never a straightforward question of one antenna. Again, it depends on the customer. But the important message here is that we deliver the S-100 with 360-degree capability, if that's a requirement.
So the next question, when is the heavy fuel engine ready and what's its endurance?
So I'll take that. I'll take that. You finish it, Dave. I mean, yes, you heard Andrew Watson speak from down there in Australia. I think it's common knowledge, and we're allowed to say it, the Australian Navy uses the S2 engine today. They are a customer using that. They have deployed with that. They are using it all the time. And then secondly, last year for one of our EMSA, European Maritime Safety Agency deployments, we actually deployed an S2 engine to one of those deployments. And the first deployment coming up this year, which I think starts next month, will have a complete deployment using S2 heavy fuel engine aircraft.
And as a side note, you just saw an aircraft flying actually during the webinar with an S2 engine.
Good point.
Endurance.
Endurance hasn't changed much. It's around 6 hours, depending on capability or load of sensors. But if you allow 6 hours under a standard fuel tank configuration and up to 10 hours with an extended fuel tank configuration.
Correct. That was the second question also as well. What is the maximum endurance? I believe Dave just answered it perfectly. So this is like you said, the same for our engine configurations.
Yeah, and just let me add an important point there is that I think probably everybody knows that the S-100 today can carry a maximum payload of 50 kilograms, and that can be spread across 2, 3, 4 payloads, as I've mentioned before. So again, it's very much right down to the concept of operations. Yes, it's 6 hours with 30 odd kilograms, but again, you know, it can be less if you're putting heavier weights on, or it can be more if you're putting a lighter payload in. So again, it's never a black and white answer. I think the important thing is the S-100 has been designed and built to give that flexibility of, you know, a variation in endurance alongside variation and different capabilities, different sensors.
The next one is also connect. Oh, sorry, Dave.
I have an important point also. Being a helicopter pilot like Neil, we often talk about payload, and a lot of people suggest that payload is both the fuel and the capability that it can carry. For us, we will guarantee you 50 kgs of payload, as in sensors, and still give you the ability to fly for that 5+ hours. We say 6 hours with 30 kgs of sensors, but you know, the payload, we're trying to give you usable payload. So a good answer would be 50 kgs of actual usable payload for the S-100.
Yes, it's a good point, isn't it, Dave? We very much separate fuel and sensors as two different things.
Yes.
The next question is one that I hope I can answer myself. What is the farthest distance the S-100 has actually been from the control station and at what weight? So personally, I was flying the aircraft for a little bit over 200 kilometers. So this is with our biggest antenna, with the 72-inch tracking antenna. We had at that time had about 194 kilograms, I believe it was. But this is mainly depending, like Dave said already, on the payload that we were using. So but I know that we have been done flights that I was not personally there, but no problem at all to fly to 200 kilograms up to the 200 kilometers.
And we were we had to prove that, because that particular customer said, go and identify a particular thing on a particular island that's 200 kilometers away. And we had to go and do it.
So this is actually what we standards do for acceptances if the requirements in the contract are there. So they are capable to carry more than 2 payloads, meaning gimbal and radar? Question mark.
Yeah, you do that, Dave.
Sorry, I was busy typing. Please ask again.
No, okay. So I think we're emphasizing this point a few times now. Traditionally, we've been an ISR platform, so an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance platform. So we've traditionally put a large 10-inch resolution EOIR sensor in what we call the belly of the aircraft. So something like whether that's a FLIR, whether that's a WESCAM, whether that's, you know, a few other sensors. So that's traditionally been our sort of our mainstay. But over the last few years, we've recognized that, of course, customers want more, customers' requirements are expanding, especially as the maturity of UAVs. So I think Michael will correct me, 2 or 3 years ago, we firstly integrated a couple of radars. So first of all, we've done a radar called the PicoSAR, which I think everybody knows from Leonardo in the UK. And then more recently, we've integrated the iMaster in the maritime domain from the company Thales. Because we've recognized that more and more that the maritime customer in particular, the EOIR is not enough for him, especially in those rough, dark days. You know, a camera doesn't do enough. So we've recognized the importance of meeting these maritime customers and integrating a proper maritime radar, which is we have done. So to do that in the main, we've obviously then had to adapt what we put in the nose payload. So traditionally, we just put a small nose camera, a sort of a basic see and avoid camera. But with putting a radar in the main, we've now put sensors such as the MX8, such as the Ultra Pop in the nose to give that combined capability. And the CONOPS there, the concept of operation, is very much that you would find a target of interest with the radar, and then you would then automatically cross-cue that onto the EOIR, and then achieve identification. Backed up with that, we use AIS, which you heard Stefan talking about earlier, as a third sensor. We also fit IFF. We can either have, I think simple mode S, we can have mode 5, we can have a full IFF suite, and all those sensors come together in the ground control station to give the person on the ground or at sea, a full level of information. What did I miss, Dave?
That's about it, Neil.
Second question connected to payloads. Do you have a plan to have a capability to geolocate cell phones for SAR applications?
Yes, we are definitely looking at that. We have a couple of civil stroke commercial customers, one of which is in Europe, who has asked us to look at that. We have identified a couple of technological solutions. Our engineers are currently looking at that today, and we would hope, I use that word in engineering sense, that it'll become a capability before the end of this year. So yes, we are looking at that. No, we haven't delivered that yet, but we're confident we will be able to quite soon.
The next question is, are you still using the deck finder solution?
I guess that's probably me again. I mean, you heard during the main part of the presentation that the CAMCOPTER automatically takes off and land, and in the land domain that's really quite straightforward, as everybody knows. But when you then put it into put it to sea, put it into the maritime, particularly when it's in rough weather and on smaller decks, we look at ways that will enhance the safety of the S-100 in that maritime sense. So the deck finder we very much see as one solution that we can take forward. So we have done a full level of integration of the deck finder. You might have noticed in the background on the rolling deck that's actually where we completely tested the deck finder in the first stage. And then we now have a couple of customers, one in Europe, one in sort of Asia, who are looking to take that to the next stage. So yes, we see deck finder very much as part of our future. And if you look at the market, there aren't that many solutions out there. There are companies who are developing different ways to do it, whether you use light, whether you use radio signals. But yes, we see a future for deck finders, certainly today, with the S-100.
The next one is quite of a short one, but a very important one. Where can I find the list of exhibitions Schiebel will be attending? I believe the easy answer to that is on our homepage. We have all the exhibitions that we will be on the homepage. So just visit us at schiebel.net and you go to exhibitions and you will see the list of exhibitions that we confirmed already in the next future. And we will add to that list, depending on the COVID situation, the exhibitions that will happen actually.
And also, if I can add, keep a lookout on LinkedIn. There's always stuff going on there which talks about where we're going to be and who's probably going to be there, and you can communicate with us through there also.
Another just one small request from my end. If you could please write your questions in English, as my French is not great and I'm not really good in any other language than English and German. So those would be my preferred languages if you could. But don't worry, we will try to answer the question later on with somebody that can speak that language. Sorry for that. Does the system require a commander? If so, what is the requirement for such a position?
That's you, Dave, because you talked about this already, didn't you?
When we're talking about a commander, as in somebody in charge of the actual system, there is certainly minimum qualifications that you need to have, but that is just basically experience on type. The actual exact number of hours escapes me, but I believe it's something like 150, but please don't quote me exactly on that. So it's really experience on type and an endorsement from the Schiebel training department to have that. But when you're trained, you are trained to exactly the same standard. But what we find, as in all aviation roles, is that one person has more of a bent towards being in charge and actually overseeing the operation. And those people naturally come to the fore during the training. And if a customer is looking for our training department to advise and offer who has actually shown that level of competency, then that can also be annotated during the training courses.
Yeah, and just one little bit to add to that, Dave, is that before we start the training with any customer, we go and meet that customer. We ask for them to give us a selection of people who they would like trained, and usually even at that stage we can probably work out who's going to be the leaders versus the operators.
Next question, also connected to the training actually. If the chief pilot and maintenance controller for a company is trained by Schiebel, can they train incoming pilots, maintainers, or do all pilots and maintainers need to go directly through Schiebel as well?
This is an interesting question. That is down to the country of operation and the local regulations. Schiebel offer training courses, but if someone was to buy a system and they had people who were trained and they elected to train their own personnel, then they could go and do that under their own regulations. But the regulatory body in a country would have to make that decision. So it's no different from having a license issued to fly a manned helicopter, doing an OEM course. Each country will be different.
But in general, what we need to add to that, sorry, Neil, you go first.
Okay, sorry. No, I was just going to add that our philosophy is one of train the trainer. So we see our role as an OEM doing the initial training, of course, but actually as that customer develops and grows, he should end up training himself. So our philosophy, as I said, is train the trainer. So other than basic courses, we also have more advanced training courses that include obviously instructor courses. There are minimum criteria to meet those levels, as you would expect. But in simple terms, we train people to become instructors, and then those people then train their own people due course. And then we obviously always provide support to that process in the background. Sorry, Michael.
Correct. No, I just wanted to say the same actually. So what we do is also, like we already said, we did not reinvent the wheel. We just take what is there for the manned aviation, like you have it. You have your standard pilot's license, and then you can go up. If you have the experience, you can go up and be an instructor. And the same thing is within our company and with our policies. So the next question, does Schiebel have accreditation from EASA? If not, when do you think you will get it?
Was that, what was the word? Certification, was it?
It's actually accreditation, but yeah, certification, I believe it's what's meant.
There are out there today, above 25 kilograms, as everybody knows, there are very few, shall we call, fully certified, remotely piloted drone UAV systems. There are examples like Watchkeeper in the UK, there's a Predator in the United States, but they are still few and far between. Schiebel, sort of been at the forefront of this, as people, I'm sure you all know. We've been building the S-100 now for something like 15 years. And because we built it to man standards right at the beginning, we've always had a good, close relationship, with Austrocontrol in Austria, but obviously also with the EASA, who Austrocontrol reports or works directly with. And we've continually gone on that journey with the EASA by implementing, adapting, changing what they've wanted us to do. Most UAVs traditionally fly under experimental permits to fly, but slowly but surely we are moving into, should we say, a more regulatory approved permits. We have one particular customer in Europe, and with them we are working very closely between their authorities, EASA, ourselves, and Austrocontrol, to take the S-100 down a certification process, which has started. But no, we're not certified, but we will be one day, but it's a journey that's very much started. And, our philosophy has been very much based on evidence. We have well over 100,000 flying hours on the S-100. You know, we've had some mishaps, of course. We've learned a lot of lessons over those 15 years. But the important point is that we've been able to use that evidence to make the S-100 better and safer, and take that information back to EASA and show them that our pedigree to give us, shall we say, a larger flight envelope. But it's different with every country as well, I think, as Dave has mentioned a few times. Our focus, obviously, EASA Europe, but again, different countries, different requirements, and we do our best to, you know, to work with them as best we can. What did I miss, Dave?
No, that was it. Really just the certificate that we do have from Auscontrol, which is the operating certificate. So like manned aviation, you have to be certified as an operator, and Auscontrol through EASA issue Schiebel a flight operator certificate, like a Part 135 for civilian operations. And that enables us to basically authorize flights with under certain conditions of that license within European airspace. So that just goes to show that those are only issued based on good rules, regulations, and documents that show you comply. So yes, we're going down that route, and as I say, watch the space. We're getting there.
Right. So this actually answered 5 of the questions that I have in the chat, so I cleaned them all out. Next one. Has the S-100 ever been used for military operations? I think we can easily say yes to that.
Yeah, and I think, but I'll add a point to that in the wider context, back to the answer to the previous question is, you know, yes, I would say something like 85% of our market is probably military government focused. And one of the reasons is that the majority of militaries and governments fly their UAVs at RPAS in regulated airspace, which they have control of that airspace. So certainly when we started the journey 15 years ago, as I said, it was much easier to fly for that sort of customer than it was in what we might call open airspace. But actually more and more, we're starting to see the commercial civil market open up. You saw one good example there of the European Maritime Safety Agency. I mean, they have a large number of UAVs flying around Europe. That's both fixed wing and rotary, small and large. And there are a number of different entities, OEMs, customers, service providers doing that. Majority of that flying is in open airspace. You know, whether that's the English Channel, whether that's the Straits of Gibraltar, whether that's in the Mediterranean, we are flying in those open airspaces because we've been able to prove that we have the pedigree to do that. And that civil commercial market will grow. Of course it will, and everybody knows that.
Thank you. Next question is actually going into, so there are all several questions about GPS jamming. Do we have a possibility to anti a possible GPS jamming?
So I'll do the first bit, and then maybe you add on in a technical sense, Michael. So we do fly in a part of the world with a customer. For those who know who it is, then fine. I'm not allowed to openly say who the end customer is, but actually because of the environment that they are flying in, we had to integrate an anti-GPS, or two actually, counter-GPS and an anti-jamming sensors. So over a period of about a year, Schiebel did go out to the market, did have conversations, and yes, has integrated both of those capabilities. So the aircraft now, thanks to our engineers, can fly without GPS, not routinely for day-to-day missions, but more when it gets jammed, it knows what to do, it knows how to get away from it, it knows how to get home. So yes, we have integrated capability and sensors to achieve that. Michael?
Just one small addition to that, actually. So what we are doing is actually we're going out to the market and see what the market is offering us. So the GPS solution that we have, the anti-jam GPS solution that we have, is nothing that we actually develop. It's something that is there on the market. So also the capabilities are there, what's on the market. So we are always looking for better and the best systems available. We have only a few small limitations, which obviously is the size, is power limitations, but other than that, we will integrate it and we will definitely update depending on what systems are on the market and new systems that are on the market.
I mean, I think it's certainly in that military sense, we recognize more and more the importance of being able to fly in a GPS denied environment. And again, I'd like to emphasize the point is you don't create an S-100 overnight or any rotary UAV that night. You know, again, I know I've said this a few times, but it is many years worth of development, of trying and failing and doing it differently. And I think because we've had so much, shall we say, engineering work on the S-100, when we then need to do something like, fly in a GPS denied environment, we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the people, our engineers in the background who know how.
Hello? I think we just lost Neil there.
Somebody didn't pay their bill.
How to do that. It's something you learn.
Oh, he's coming back.
I froze, didn't I?
Yes, and we did not hear you for a second there.
You dropped out.
But anyway, let us go to the next question. Is it possible to hand over control from one control station on a ship to another ship for a safe landing?
Absolutely, it is. Yes. So if both ships are suitably equipped, there is handover. And the advantage here is you could also do the same handover from a shore base to a ship base. So you could have a ship out at sea already on patrol. It needs an extra set of eyes. You can then take off one of your UAVs from the shore, fly it out to the extent of the range of the antenna. The ship could be a further, say, 50, 100 kilometers out from there. It can pick up the air vehicle, take control, land it on the back of the ship. It can hand it back to the shore when it's finished, or it could hand it over to another ship if necessary. So yes, very multi-capable in that facet.
And something that is a little bit connected to that, what's the capacity and limit in terms of order takeoff and NTEC finder capacity? How do you address these challenges? So my answer to that would actually be that when we are integrating our system into a ship, it is really depending on the ship that we are integrating into. So we make more or less a cut version just for that specific ship to make sure that we have the most and the biggest widely on capabilities available on that ship. Like Neil already said before, is a tech finder necessary? Is it not necessary? It's really depending on the ship. We have integrated our system into the smallest ships available, where you only have a landing deck of 3 meters. We have integrated into bigger helicopter carriers. So it's really depending on the ship, and it will be addressed specifically to that ship.
Agree.
Several questions about detect and avoid requirements in the future.
I'll start. We today as an OEM do not have a recognized detect and avoid system, or even shall we say a qualified see and avoid system. And in fact, I think I would argue, I'm not sure of which drone system, RPAS system does have one. However, we do get around it in the short term by some examples I mentioned earlier. So we either have a nose camera, which gives a degree of see and avoid. We can put an EOIR, I mentioned earlier, something like the UltraPop or the MX8 in the nose, which also gives you a much better see and avoid. And then if you are carrying a radar, such as the iMaster in the main belly, that will give you a degree of detect and avoid. Obviously, the final bit is, as I mentioned earlier, we were either Mode S, we're a fully IFF, which can be carried. So we have ways of, shall we say, working with it today, but no, we don't yet have a fully qualified detect and avoid system. Don't get me wrong, we've talked to a lot of companies, we've done a lot of sort of R&D, but I think I'd make the point that I don't think there's one out there yet that meets all the requirements that people need. Go on, Michael.
One addition that we actually do have is we are using an ADS-B in and out transponder on our helicopters. So in civil aviation, we are able to see other aircraft flying. And also there is an automation inside of our system that will give you a warning, will give you a heads up if your course is directly going into another aircraft, if the aircraft is seen by the ADS-B in and out. So there is kind of a working mitigation for now. But as Neil said, this is also depending on the market and what's available.
Yeah, you know, I forgot ADSB. We shouldn't talk lightly about it, but because actually it's a very good capability that we have integrated, right. And customers in the civil community are using that because of the reasons Michael said. So yeah, sorry, I forgot about that.
Can the S-100 carry an anti-submarine mission, such as carry deploy sonar?
That's a very what's the word, sort of up-to-date question. So we are working with a large European prime on exactly that, which we see as our next challenge. So we plan for the S-100 to be able to be involved in what they call ASW, anti-submarine warfare. There are a number of ways you can do that. So we are looking at the ways that we can carry sonar buoys. There's the small, I think they're called the size G sonar buoys, either from a side payload on either side of the helicopter, or maybe even in the main payload underneath. So yes, we're looking at that. That's one area of it, but obviously the other area is it's all well and good for something like an S-100 to drop a number of sonar buoys and create what they call as a barrier. How do you get the information from those sonar buoys back into the ship? And so with that same prime, we're looking at the idea of a dedicated communications relay, which will also be fitted to the aircraft, but will also use our own data link. So it'll take information, you know, from the sonar buoy into the aircraft, and then down our data link into the I don't know, the host ship. So yes, we're very much working on that. In fact, I'm involved in a conversation with that prime straight after this webinar. When will that come to market? If things go to plan, we could be demonstrating it in an exercise in Q3 of this year if everything goes to plan. But I think realistically, probably delivering it to the market is probably next year or the year after.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, there's also another question from Richard there. Richard, I will reach out to you separately regarding that comparison you're talking about. I have some very good data and costing on all of that, and how you can take that back to a potential end user. I'll contact you directly.
Right. Another question connected to the capability actually is, in the maritime application, could your UAV be fitted in order to act as a link between an unmanned surface vehicle and its mother platform for live monitoring and USV or real-time data transfer?
And I guess I probably answered that question in the last question with this phrase, communications relay, comms relay. So right. Yes, most definitely. We haven't today, but I think the answer about the ASW, anti-submarine warfare, gives you some indication how that can happen. And the other thing to add is we also recognize, I saw a question at the beginning about beyond visual line of sight. Obviously, if we're flying out to 200 kilometers, we're very much beyond visual line of sight in the true sense. But we also recognize that that's not necessarily the answer to everybody's questions. So we're putting a lot of energy into the use of SATCOM, and the SATCOM systems are now small enough to go on board the S-100. So we worked out that we can actually put SATCOM sensors on the tail area of the S-100, which you could never have done, someone will correct me, but 5 or 10 years ago. So we haven't integrated that today. It's another example of our engineers are deep in the company working out how we take this forward. But I think in due course, you'll see SATCOM being put on aircraft like the S-100. That then, of course, is a comms relay in itself as well. So there is more than one way to achieve the aim as we move forward.
Neil, just going on from that, sorry, with there, because there's another question that keeps cropping up, and it's all to do with flying in mountains terrain. The limitation in mountains is all to do with line of sight of the antennas currently. Therefore, once the SATCOM solution is up and working, and if a customer is actually wanting us to go down that path, then that opens up more opportunity to fly within mountainous areas. But again, it's whether you want it to fly in the mountains and land at a particular altitude above 3,000 meters, or whether you just wanted to fly and transit and give you data. But the SATCOM solution will open up an awful lot more when it comes to operating in mountain areas.
Funny thing was, the next question I wanted to ask is actually, do we have a SATCOM? So can skip that one. But connected follow-on question actually on the sonar. What about magnetic anomaly detectors, MET sensors?
We have already integrated a MAD, as it's called, magnetic anomaly detector, for a customer in the United States, which we did about 10 years ago, I think it is. So we did it for him and he used it, but nobody since then has asked for it. So if you have the requirement, we know we can do it. We're happy to move forward, but when you won't see it in any of our brochures because nobody is utilizing that today, but yes, it can be done.
Then what are your target customers in the civil market? And in brackets, 85% on military market, so you're not progress margin in civil market. Well, no, actually, but yeah, Neil?
Yeah, that's, no, I was trying to make the point that over the life of the S-100 so far, our customers have been predominantly from the military stroke government domains areas. However, as time is going on, slowly but surely, we're starting to see more civil commercial customers. And one really good example is Bristow in the United Kingdom, where they have an S-100 and they have been using that system as a sort of proof of concept in the search and rescue area. So, and you know, the first thing people will say was, well, you can only search. Okay, well, actually, we can do a very good job at searching. And you know, what we've done for that particular, yeah, I'm not sure we did it for that customer, but you know, we have a large MX-10 in the belly, and then we've put a wide area camera from a company called Overwatch in the nose, so we're able to sweep and for long ranges to identify something like a person in the water. And then when we sort of identified it, or when we found it rather, then we switch to the large resolution EOIR to actually identify it. And of course, the beauty there is, rather than launch something like a large S-92 helicopter that costs an awful lot of money per hour, you can actually launch the S-100 probably quicker. You can send him out into that search area, and he's probably a 20th, a 30th, a 40th of the price of the S-92. I don't know the facts, but he can efficiently, or the S-100 can efficiently find that person, that sad or unfortunate person in the water. We can also do a degree of the rescue. And if you've seen our video we did with the Belgian Navy a few years ago, we actually proved that we could drop a life jacket, for example, in the water next to the person. So we can do a limited area of rescue. And then, of course, the manned helicopter comes in and picks him up. So, and something we haven't talked about so far is this word complementary. People often talk about how you're going to replace, you know, drones are going to replace manned assets. I certainly don't see that. I see them very much working together in a complementary sense in the future. So search and rescue is one obvious area. EMSA, I think, is one very large area, whether that's maritime surveillance or whether that is actually flying up behind ships and monitoring the sulfur that their funnels are putting out, because obviously nowadays, in accordance with the maritime organizations, they have limits they have to keep. So actually we can talk about oil and gas. As you might imagine, I can go on for ages, but yes, there are lots of opportunities and they're all starting to open up for us now.
Next question. In average, how long is the delivery time? If you want to, I can answer that one. So what we are doing is our production planning is actually set up to produce for already existing contracts, as well as what we call whitetail aircrafts, to be able to flexible deliver to customers on a very short notice. This is depending mainly then on the specifics these customers require. So for example, payload A versus payload B, what's the delivery time on those payloads? That will be something that will be outside of that one. But in general, I would say that we can, and we delivered in the last years as an average of 6 months and shorter, definitely.
But we have delivered to someone, I think, in 3 months once, didn't we? When there was a very urgent requirement, because we had white tails ready to go, didn't we?
Right, and this is, like I said, depending on the configuration of the aircraft that the customer wants to have. If we're talking about split delivery, the aircrafts and the control station equipment can go out within a few weeks even. So Next question, emergency recovery systems, parachute or floating systems? So, Dave, do you want to take that or should I?
Go on, Dave.
The S-100 is currently has the ability to be fitted with deployable floats, which are side mounted on the S-100. So that option is already there and is already delivered and in use with customers. So the option of floats is available.
So the next question, is there a plan to be?
Can I just add to something there? Is one of the other things we've looked at is the idea of putting a parachute in the rotor head as well, because someone will probably ask there's a lot of conversation, a lot of debate about flight termination systems. You know, do you have one that controls the system from within, e.g. Cutting down the engine, or do you have one that maybe deploys a parachute out of the rotor head or, you know, out of the belly of the drone? I think all I'll say is we've looked at both. We effectively have an internal flight termination system already on the system, but you know, again, it depends on customers and their requirements. The rotor head, because it's hollow, could carry such a parachute if we decided to go down that route. So again, there's a number of answers to the question.
So is there a plan to be able to fly in low visibility and fog conditions? Actually, we are doing that all the time.
Absolutely, so, yeah. Absolutely, it can. It's fully automated. It can fly in clouds and.
Right. The only caveat I have to put on that one is because we had it once now in an operation where the airworthiness actually did not allow even us as a UAV to fly in a foggy terrain. So obviously this is something that we cannot control. If the local airworthiness from that country prohibits us to fly in those visibility areas, then we are not to. But for us as a UAV, it really does not matter. I'm not sitting inside. I'm sitting down at the control station and I'm looking at my data in the control station. And I don't need to really see to fly the aircraft, which is the important thing on being a UAV.
The important answer is the air vehicle is capable of flying in those conditions. It's whether local regulations allow you to fly in those conditions.
Then a big one actually, and also a funny one, so I want to ask you definitely, is what is the most important changes have been made to the S-100 since 2003? So I believe this is a round that everybody of us can say what he believes is the biggest change from all of those many that we had actually.
I'll go first then. Being from the maritime sector, I think I would argue the S2 engine. Because we as an OEM recognized, you know, probably at least 10 years ago, that if we were going to be successful putting our helicopter onto ships, particularly military brackets NATO ships, we would have to have a heavy fuel engine, in other words, a non-petrol engine. And if those who know our story, we've had a bit of a tricky road getting to where we are today with our heavy fuel S2 engine. You know, we've had a few tries and we've had a few failures, but as you've seen and you've heard us talk about today, we now have a fully operational, fully commercial, off-the-shelf heavy fuel engine, which has been a massive effort by our company, but I think puts us in really good stead for the future. So for me, and I've pestered the owner for 10 years, Hans Schiebel, that we had to do heavy fuel. And now it works. And I think that's probably, for me, that's probably one of the biggest things.
Dave?
No, just the forefront, being at the forefront and continue developing. So it's not one thing that has actually happened, but it's actually that Schiebel and the S-100 has been at the forefront of the VTOL UAV market, and it continues to be there. And every time a customer is asking for some more innovation, our engineers and technical guys have the capability to actually look at the requirement and come up with a solution. And some of those solutions are much quicker than others, but it's a rapidly evolving market and Schiebel remain at the forefront.
So for my answer, I'm with the company actually since 2005. So I witnessed the first prototypes. I was actually in production maintenance back at that time. So I was also working on the aircrafts directly. And I can tell you from that point to now, the aircraft completely changed. The only thing that we did not change is obviously our appearance. So when you see our pictures from back in the days till today, you will see the aircraft being the same, because this is also our brand that we are selling on the market. But the insides of it completely changed. So when the question is, what is the major thing? I would say the whole aircraft. It completely changed. Like Neil said, we started with the S2 engine a few years back now. It's been with a customer. We also have received some comments that I did not read out loud from customers actually telling how good the S2 is. But even before, with the S1 engine that we introduced about 10 years ago, everything changed. And the biggest issue and the biggest thing that we are working on, and I'm really proud that I'm part of that one, is the reliability part. We are increasing reliability, availability, maintainability of the aircraft every year, and we're going step by step to give the customer more of what he's buying when he's investing into our system. So I believe that would be a perfect point to end the Q&A session for today. Is there anything else, Neil, Dave, that you want to add?
No.
Perfect.
Just to state the obvious, I noticed that we had over 190 people listening in. So just want to thank everybody for dialing in and watching and listening. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Correct. And for everybody, I just wanted to give you a small heads up what is happening next. So like I said already before, we will try to answer all of your questions afterwards. So you will see them posted, as well as this video will be going live on YouTube and Vemit next week after our second webinar that we planned for the Western Hemisphere and the time zones there. So after this one is happening, then we will update this video to YouTube and Vimit. So if you want to, you can watch that video again and again. And other than that, actually, I'm thanking everybody here. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Neil. Thanks everybody, and also including Anna and the team for this webinar. And hope to see you all to our next webinar, which will definitely happen. Stay safe and join us on every of our channels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.